Well, welcome along to Donington Park for the opening rounds of the 2025 GT Cup Championship. Donington has been the familiar start to our championship season. This year, though, we've got some subtly different formats. This weekend, we'll see 2 sprint races and a longer pit stop endurance race with refuelling. That's a first for GT Cup. Familiar names on the grid, but lots of new drivers, lots of new cars joining what for sure is going to be an exciting 2025 championship. As always, there's some familiar names on the grid, but also there's lots of new cars and new drivers joining what for sure is going to be an exciting 2025 championship. We managed to catch up with our reigning champion, Charlotte Gilbert, earlier on today. Charlotte, it's fantastic to see you back in the GT Cup paddock. Of course, you're our reigning champion in GT Cup.
Yeah, I had a fantastic year last year. If anybody had said to me 4 years ago you're going to be sort of overall champion for GT Cup, I would never have believed it, but it's a nice thing to hang on to for the next year and see who's going to be champion 2025. Yeah, so great, fantastic.
Fantastic year for you and for Tom Rawlings, who of course you shared the car with last year, but also it's a brilliant year for Top Cats Racing, who made it a clean sweep in every possible championship.
Yeah, we won overall champions, won sporting, sprint and team. I think that just about covers it. And of course GTC class we won as well, and Warren and Fraser Fenwick came second in GTC as well. So we kind of had the top spots on everything, I think, pretty much last year, yeah.
So championship last year, but this year you're not behind the wheel of the car this weekend?
No, I think on the back of the success from last year, we got a lot of interest in running our cars. So I sort of had to make a decision on, do I do it again, or do Warren and I run it just as a race team and we don't do it and take it more seriously with other drivers. So what we've chosen to do was to get drivers, and we fill all seats in all cars, and we've done more than that this year again, and we're actually running 3 cars. So yeah, so amazing.
It means that that's a different role for you then over the course of this weekend and the rest of the season as you look at other drivers driving the cars. Does that mean that you're a frustrated spectator?
No, I haven't. It's funny that you mentioned that. I've gone through 4 test days with everybody now, absolutely fine. And then, of course, when they all start revving the engines for qualifying, I suddenly got that feeling in my chest that, oh God, I really want to be out there. But I knew that was going to happen. But I still get that exhilaration watching our drivers going out. Our drivers are quick. I think we're going to be at the top of GTC, and I think we're going to have the measure of quite a few GT3 cars as well. So I'm going to be getting my excitement from that.
So it's just a sabbatical for the moment then?
I don't know. I know it's still there. I know I still want to drive. So I don't think it's the end for me. Let's put it that way.
Well done on the championship, and it's great to catch up with you.
Thank you.
We also managed to catch up with some other drivers earlier on this weekend. We caught up with father and son pairing James and Bill Cayley. So Bill, we saw yourself and your father out last year racing with us in GT Cup. That was a one-off. You're in for the full 2025 season.
Yeah, no, I can say we obviously both thoroughly enjoyed last seasons at Silverstone, and I think coming home with a few trophies obviously helped that as well. The whole season this year, so hopefully we can sort of get a few more trophies and see how it goes.
You've been experienced in one-make racing, but when you're out there in your GTB Porsche, you've got GT3 cars trying to get by, you're catching Group GTA cars. It's a different dynamic that you'll have to experience this year.
Yeah, I think because prior years in Porsche Club, I started off in boxes, so I had that initial sort of speed change from Class 1 to Class 2, sort of them in their Carreras and Caymans. So I'm kind of used to maybe being lapped, which is never a fun thing. But I think in this, the dynamic sort of, having the GT3 cars sort of going, which, hopefully they won't lap us, but going that much quicker than sort of GTBs, GT8s and stuff, I should be used to the dynamic, but obviously aim is to push it and obviously try get some of the GTC boys as well.
James, you're back with us as well. Dad and lad racing, it must be a fantastic experience, 2 of you racing together, sharing the same car.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we're really looking forward to it. We had a great time at Silverstone, as Bill said. I think probably my wife's probably a bit happier. Us, rather than racing against each other, we're sort of not out on track together. So that's a good thing. And what a great thing to do with your son. So it's a lovely thing to come and do at the weekend. We're looking forward to it. I mean, unlike Bill, I haven't I've got to get used to maybe cars passing me because I didn't start in Class 2, so I've always been sort of used to being at the front, which I know we're not going to be tomorrow or this weekend or any weekend, but it's going to be a whole different experience. We've got to learn to, manage the races. Not every lap's not going to be a quali lap. We've got a 100-minute race on Sunday, which is new, refueling, pit stop. So it's all a new experience for us, and just a different mindset to try and get ourselves into, making sure you got to finish to go anywhere. So we'll see how we go.
What are the aspirations then for your first full season in GT Cup?
I think there's 3 cars now in GTB, so it'd be nice to do well. I think within our own class, it'd be nice to improve ourselves and maybe improve our times when we get to Silverstone, see how we are at Silverstone compared to where we were last year, and just enjoy the season. And there's always an aspiration to do well. We always want to do as best we can, and if we can beat the other GTBs, then happy days. And just grow and learn and enjoy the season.
Well, it's great to see you back for the full season. All the very best in the Uber GT Porsche, guys.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Cheers. Thank you.
Well, GT Cup had a media day here at Donington Park just a few weeks ago, and we managed to catch up with some of the other drivers that we'll see on the grid here this weekend.
Great to have you back, Will, and of course with Graham Tilley as well, a former driver from the series. How does it feel to be back?
Really good, really good. I'm super excited because we've got a new Lambo Super Trofeo, which is wicked fun. Bit different to the Mercedes, especially the Nissan that we used to race, but the car's wicked fun. And it's really cool to be back in a car that I'm quite used to. I've not raced a Super Trofeo before, but I've driven the GT3 and it's fast, it's good fun, sounds wicked.
And of course, with Graham being back in the series, he will want to get some time in the new car. We've tested at the moment as we're recording this. How has it been so far?
Really good. I think, without checking, we're still quickest by 1.8 odd seconds. So it's been a really successful day. Not done a huge amount of laps, but we've verified everything that we needed to verify. We've run through our test program, so all smiles all round, basically.
And of course, a new format as well for GT Cup with 2 100-minute races. How we're looking forward to that. How do you think Graham will be looking forward to it as well?
Pretty selfish, to be honest, because I get to drive quite a lot. So I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah, nice 1 hour, 40-minute races. So I get plenty of time to scythe through traffic and see what's going on. So really looking forward to that. And I'm sure Graham will enjoy it as well. Plenty of sprint races on Saturday and a nice long run on Sunday.
You're in quite a congested class with it's almost like a British Lamborghini Super Trofeo series almost. So it's going to be quite an intense but exciting fight. I bet you'll be really geared up for this one to try and get the class title.
Yeah, I think so. That's what we're gunning for. I don't think we set any targets. Number one is just have a ton of fun. But obviously, I take a lot of enjoyment from winning, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's brilliant to have quite a few of the Super Trofeo cars in the class. It'll be really good racing. There's a couple of different little Evo generations in there, so there'll be still a bit of to and fro on top speeds and cornering performance. But it's really good. There's a ton of different drivers, so it will just be a mega mix.
I cannot wait to watch you out there. Good to have you back. Thank you, and best of luck for the season, Will.
Thank you.
So there's a few of the drivers that we've managed to catch up with so far this weekend in what is, well, it felt almost like spring earlier on, but there's a bit of a breeze here at Donington Park, and now the sun has disappeared. It's feeling rather chilly out there, so there's work to be done for sure when the drivers head off on their formation lap to try and build some temperature in their control Pirelli tyres that are there. Well, I'm up here in the commentary box. Somewhere down there on the grid is Charlotte Lake, who hopefully might be able to grab a quick word with a driver or two in advance of our first round of this championship. You can see all of the cars are on the grid. There are a couple of cars that you can just see in the pit lane area. Brent Millage is one of those. His is the red Ginetta that's at the front of the queue, and I can't quite pick out who the car is that is behind him. I have to wait and see. I think it might be Simon Griffiths and Ray Harris potentially at the wheel of the number 30 car, but it's very difficult to see. Our cameraman zooming in as much as he possibly can, but I can't quite. All right, it's got some pink flashes to the front of it, so that will be Mac Priestwood, who in qualified 19th quickest, but the car was deemed to have been a little bit underweight in qualifying, so it lost its qualifying times and therefore was going to have to start off the back of the grid anyway. So that's the update from the cars in the pit lane. Let's go down there onto the grid. Charlotte Lake has managed to catch up, I think, with the pole sitter.
Discovery and voyage into the unknown, but yeah, let's see how we do. Looking forward to it.
And how is the car feeling for you?
Good, yeah. We've still got some tweaks to make to it in the future, but hopefully we'll get a bit more pace out of it.
Amazing, thank you, best of luck.
So good to hear from Darren Kell there, our pole sitter, and well, considering it's the voyage into the unknown and new discovery, they did well because Darren qualified the car in a time of 1 minute 26.116. Amazingly, the top 4 cars, which are all GT3 specification cars, were covered by less than, or just over actually, half a second in qualifying, so there's nothing to choose between them. Even in Group GTB, just 6/10 of a second separated first from second, and in Group GTH, 82 thousandths of a second was what separated pole position in Group GTH from the second quickest car in Group GTH. So if qualifying is anything to go by, this is going to be a brilliant start to the 2025 GT Cup Championship season. So we'll guide you through the grid when they head off on their formation lap. The Hyundai safety car, which is the vehicle manufacturer partner now for MSV circuits, heads around the circuit, the electric safety car. So off the cars go onto the formation lap in advance of the first 25-minute sprint race of the 2025 championship season. Let's guide you through the grid then. Darren Kell starts from pole position. It's Simon Orange that is alongside. Row 2 of the grid is Mark Smith and Greg Caton at the wheel of the first non-McLaren on the grid. That's the Porsche. Then as we move on to row number 3, it is championship returnee Ian Campbell. Good to see him back, partnered up with Fraser Fenwick, so he drives the Lamborghini in 5th place, and Peter Ursig, new to the championship in his Audi, is in 6th place. Andre Borodin is 7th, and for company he's got Bal Sidhu, who will start in the number 16 Lamborghini from 8th position. Then as we move on to 9th, it's Graham Tilley back in the championship. He's there in 9th place ahead of Tom Walpole. He was the leading car in Group GTB in qualifying. The KTM lines up 10th. It's Paul Bailey and then Bill Cayley who will be driving the number 80 car in this race, the Porsche. We spoke to them earlier on. And then it is next up, it's going to be Frank Morris, who has got Archie Clark, the leading Group GTH car, for company. Then as we move on to the next row of the grid, it's going to be Mark Ellman that will start alongside Rupert Wilmans, Jolt Racing back, but have moved up to an Artura for this year. Doc Bush returns to the championship on the inside of the next row of the grid, and for company he has got Patrick Collins, another championship returnee. He's partnered up tomorrow in the pit stop race with 4 times BTCC champion Colin Turkington. Then as we move on to the next row of the grid, Ray Harris will start alongside Matt Eddles, before we then head to the final row of the grid, and I think these are the 2 cars that will be starting from the pit lane. Number 54, another championship returnee. Great to see Brent Millage back, and he has got Mac Priestwood in the number 73 Anthony Seddon racing car for company. So that car put to the back of the grid because of some problems, and also SVG Motorsport by the look of things. The number 24 car is also opting potentially to start from the pit lane. That had a new engine put in after qualifying, so I think engine woes probably meant they actually didn't get out for qualifying, so they are also starting off the back. But great work by SVG Motorsport and the team to even get that car out, because it was having a new engine placed within it. And I'll have to try and pick up on who the starting driver for that one therefore will be. So the car's just heading round onto what could be the first of 2 formation laps. We'll have to wait and see whether we're going to go green this time through. And yes, we are. So we're about to get the 2025 GT Cup season underway here at Donington Park. Darren Kell on pole position, but it looks so Simon Orange has got a good start and is almost wheel to wheel with him. They bang off each other 2 or 3 times. And Mark Smith now is trying to go around the outside of everybody. Is he going to run out of room? He just avoids tipping wheels into the gravel trap. But Simon Orange, through all of that, has picked up the lead of the race from Darren Kell. But a couple of times they were sort of door mirror to door mirror with just light touches, I think, between the pair of them. They both got away with it. There was never a puff of smoke. Peter Ursig in the Audi also dives up the inside of Ian Campbell's Group GTC McLaren. Andre Borodin runs wide, but through all of that, everybody is safely through the first corner, which is good to see. Those, of course, that started from the pit lane will be just that little bit further back at this stage. So through McLean's corner up towards Coppice, we'll guide you through the way that all of the different groups work, because we've got 6 different groups all represented on the grid this weekend. Group GTO is for the open specification cars. Group GT3 is for those that run to full GT3 specification. Group GTC is for Cup specification cars, so in other words Super Trofeo cars, or might be Ginetta Super Cup. Then we have Group GTB, which is for earlier model Cup cars. Group GTH, which is for GT4 homologated cars, and Group GTA, which is for older challenge cars and cars that run to GT4 but are probably an old homologation. Then it does mean that we end up with multiple class or group racing, but it's all very close, as you can see. There is Patrick Collins going well. Over the start-finish line comes Simon Orange in the lead of the race. Darren Kell in second place is under pressure from Greg Caton at the wheel of the Porsche. Greg's just doing the sprint races today. We've seen him out racing in the past in the GCAT Racing Porsche. Now that car is still back at the workshop. This is a brand new car that they only picked up a week or so ago. And Greg is racing solo this weekend at the wheel of it. He sits there in third place. Number 247, Patrick Collins, still making good progress. He nips up the inside of Rupert Williams at the wheel of the Jolt Racing McLaren Artura. And then next up will be the number 30 Ginetta in the hands of Ray Harris, who I think is also going to try and have a nibble on Rupert Williams as they head down into the old hairpin. Rupert raced in a older McLaren 570 last year and is still getting used to the new Artura. Ray Harris picks him off though on the exit of the old hairpin, and the number 30 Ginetta now escapes and is starting to disappear up the road, which means now that Rupert Williams has lost one place, he's now got Doc Bush in the Team Parkk Racing Porsche lining up behind him, followed by Matt Eddles, who's having a brilliant run at the wheel of what is probably the oldest car in the field, the older specification, Aston Martin Vantage. I spoke to his co-driver Sam Mayer-Lochnan earlier on. They said they've done what they can to the car. They are still a little bit overweight. They can't do anything about that, and they are going to push as hard as they can in Group GTA in what is a good car to see in the field, a car that did win a championship in GT Cup a few years ago. That was in the hands of Chris Murphy, who isn't out today but should be out tomorrow for the 100-minute race. So through Redgate Corner, Simon Orange disappearing up the road. The number 24 BMW, which started from the pit lane, it's Ian Astley that I've just been able to establish who was the starting driver for that one. So that just clarifies the one single car that I hadn't picked up on whom the starting drive was for. In the meantime, great little fight going on for second, third and fourth place. Winds its way through Schwantz Curve and up towards McLean's Corner. Darren Kell, who hasn't really done any GT3 racing. We did see Darren and James in the GT Cup Championship, what was it, 2022 was it, I think, at the wheel of a Mercedes AMG GT4. And other than that, Darren's largely done racing with the 750 Motor Club or in the likes of Mazdas in the past. So GT3 is a very different prospect for him, but he's going beautifully well. Greg Caton in the Porsche, and then the Team Parkk Racing, Parkk Motorsport McLaren, the black and the pink car in the hands of the American driver Mark Smith, who at the moment is scheduled to do, I think, 3 rounds of GT Cup, but talking to Martin Plowman, team owner of Parkk Motorsport, if he enjoys it and goes well, we might see a chunk more of Mark Smith in the championship, which would be really good to see, because he's a quick driver and is slowly getting used to all of the British circuits, having last year, I think, largely travelled from America over to the UK for each round and then gone back home. Greg Caton going to have a nibble here up the inside at Redgate Corner on Darren Kell, who squeezes him to the apex. There's contact between the pair. Darren Kell disappears off into the gravel, and I suspect, can the McLaren get going again? Well, if he can, he needs to be very careful he doesn't spin the wheels, but Greg Caton was pretty much there, but there was just the lightest of touch between the pair of them, and I'm afraid that whilst Greg Caton got away with it, Darren Kell didn't, and the pole sitter is off and into the gravel trap in the opening round of the 2025 GT Cup Championship. Greg Caton therefore up into second. Darren Kell gets the engine fired up, but yeah, as I thought, as soon as he tries to engage a gear, you can see the wheels bite into the gravel, and as long as he's really careful with the clutch release, he might just be able to get out, and he is. That is very, very good driving from Darren Kell. He didn't just floor the throttle, he's waited for a gap in the traffic. Yes, lots of time lost, but he's still in the race, and that's the important thing. If he'd have released the clutch a little bit quicker, it would have spun those wheels up, it would have dug itself into the gravel, and that would have been it for Darren Kell. So next few corners, just be careful of gravel in the brake ducts and the air ducts, and then once you've got all the gravel off the tyres, push on again. There is the KTM Crossbow, great to see it out. Tom Walpole, who did do the odd round with us last year. He is coming under pressure from Andrei Borodin at the wheel of the Greystone GT McLaren. Good to see Greystone back in the championship, and Andrei as well, who for this weekend is partnered up with Ed Peed. But Ed is the pro driver and therefore cannot take part in the 2 sprint races that we have today. Tom Walpole should be leading, I think, Class GTB at the moment. Yes, he is. He's in 9th position overall at the wheel of the GT4 spec KTM. Number 16, Bal Sidhu, new to the championship. He is hot on the heels of the familiar colours of Graham Tilley as they propel themselves down through the Craner curves. And Graham Tilley is not that far behind Ian Campbell, who is leading Group GTC at the moment. So those 3 Lamborghinis all fighting for 1st, 2nd and 3rd in Group GTC. As for Darren Kell, well, he lost 16 places there, came through in 18th place, having extracted the McLaren out of the Redgate gravel trap. Now, Darren Kell, of course, is having to carve his way back through all of the traffic as well. So up the inside of Mac Priestwood he goes on the way in towards Redgate, through past what will be Rupert Williams on the way out of Redgate and down through Hollywood. So that's another couple of places picked up by Darren Kell. He said that Tom Walpole was leading Group GTB. Well, that Porsche will be second in Group GTB, and we've had 2 cars off. I guess that one of them is Rupert Williams in the McLaren Artura, yes, and the other one is Mac Priestwood at the wheel of the Ginetta. Didn't see what caused it, what started it, but can see the result of it, which is 2 cars in the gravel trap down at the old hairpin. So that will be covered by localised yellows for the moment. The officials up in race control will establish as to whether we need to go to a safety car with those 2 cars there, whether they can both be extracted where they were. Tom Walpole allows the McLaren of Andrei Borodin to go through, so that'll be Andrei Borodin up into 9th position now. And for Tom Walpole, no point trying to hold back a GT3 car. He is fully focused on trying to hang on to the lead of Group GTB, and if he looks in his mirrors, that Porsche there in the hands of what will be Bill Cayley for this race is not that far behind. There'll be no overtaking all the way down through the Craner curves though, because of the stricken cars in the gravel trap there. And the battle for Group GTC is still hotting up as well. Graham Tilley still trying to keep at bay the blue and the orange car of Bal Sidhu. They're both chasing the number 23 Group GTC leading Lamborghini Huracan in the hands of Ian Campbell. But, as I thought might be the case, the Hyundai safety car is on standby. And whilst it still remains in the pit lane, you can see the safety car boards are out there on the pit wall and the yellow flags are out. So we are already under safety car conditions, even though the safety car is still in the pit lane, and the safety car will stay there at pit lane entry until the race leader starts to come up behind it, and then it will head out onto the circuit. So here we go, out comes the safety car, picks up Simon Orange, who had built up a 7-second advantage, and all of that is going to dwindle down to not a great deal at all. So I think we can have a quick look back at what happened down there at the old hairpin. Let's just have a quick look. So look in the background, there is Rupert Williams, and in the background you can see in the background of the shot, off goes sideways into the gravel trap Rupert Williams. For Mac Priestwood, he was more sort of straight on going into the gravel trap, but couldn't quite see what caused it, whether it was maybe one car just getting a little bit of a slide midway through the corner and that distracted both, or whether there was any contact between the pair of them. Simply don't know, but we do know that sadly that is 2 cars out of the opening race of the season, and might be a little bit of light damage to the McLaren. I'm not quite sure whether it made it all the way up to the tyre wall, but for Rupert Williams that is a big shame, and for Mac Priestwood that's a shame as well. The car was testing yesterday here at Donington Park. They had a bit of an off into the gravel trap yesterday, if memory serves me correctly, in testing in the 73 Ginetta, and weren't quite sure whether they were going to race this weekend or not. They'd put the entry in but were considering whether they're going to do it. They wanted to see what the pace was like in the car, and after testing yesterday they were happy with the pace and therefore committed to race this weekend. But unfortunately race number 1 of the season hasn't quite gone to plan for them. So let me run you down through the order then. Simon Orange leads the way in the Orange Racing powered by JMH McLaren. In second place it's the GCAT Racing Porsche of Greg Caton. Third place it's the number 10 McLaren, which is Mark Smith for Paddock Motorsport, and fourth place is number 9 Peter Ursig in the Audi, new to the championship, but Peter Ursig has done a lot of winning in that Audi in the past. Next up is the white and purple Lamborghini heading towards us now. That is the Group GTC leading car in the hands of Ian Campbell, who we've seen racing GT Cup in the past in British GT, and he did a little bit of McLaren Trophy recently, but he's still getting used to a Super Trofeo spec car. Then it's Graham Tilley in the red and Dayglow yellow colours. He is second in Group GTC, and Bal Sidhu, who is 7th overall in the number 16 Lamborghini, is 3rd in Group GTC. Paul Bailey in his McLaren. We've seen him racing the Brabham and the Lamborghini in the last few years, but it's a McLaren he's got out for this weekend. Hopefully we'll see the Brabham back in the future. He's there in 8th place. Andre Borodin in the blue and yellow McLaren, heading towards the camera now, is in 9th place, and Tom Walpole in the number 13 KTM is completing the top 10. He is the leader of Group GTB at this stage, but only just, because he's got Bill Cayley still right behind him, I think, at the wheel of the Porsche, who is second in Group GTB and will lie 11th overall. 12th overall is the number 63 car, which will be Frank Morris in another Lamborghini. He's partnered up with James Pickford, who was a British Touring Car Championship driver with Seat some years ago as a result of the prize he won for winning the Seat Cupra Cup in the UK. Then it is Archie Clark, number 82, is next up. He's sharing with the pro driver Tom Canning, but Archie new to GT racing, having raced in Ginetta Juniors in the past. 14th place will be Mark Ellman, who cut him in half, and he largely says Ginetta through the centre. He's at the wheel of his Ginetta G56 Evo GT4. 15th place is number 30, which is going to be Ray Harris. 16th place will be Doc Bush. 17th place will be the recovering Darren Kell. 18th place will be Patrick Collins on his return to the championship in his Ginetta. Matt Eddles will be 19th, and completing the top 20 should be Ian Astley at the wheel of the SVG Motorsport BMW M4, which runs in Group GTA rather than Group GTH, because that BMW is an older homologation. As I say, if it's a current homologation of a GT4 car, it goes into Group GTH. If it's an older homologation, then they drop into Group GTA. So still extracting cars from gravel traps. Clocks is still ticking down in what is the first of 3 races this weekend. It is a subtly different format, as we mentioned. Usually, if you're familiar with GT Cup, what we have is a sprint race and a pit stop race each day, a 25-minute sprint race and then a 50-minute pit stop race, and then we reset that and do that again on day number 2 on Saturday, and the same on Sunday. But here and at Silverstone, we've got what is called the GT Cup 100 weekend. So what we have are 2 25-minute sprint races today, and then tomorrow we will have a 100-minute pit stop race, so an hour and 40 minutes it will be, and there'll be refuelling and tyre changes and everything in that, and that's something that's a little bit different. Testing the format for this year as the GT Cup team and Beat Motorsport team continually try and evolve the championship, but also listen to the customers, which is hugely important, and see if they are happy with new formats before they even consider introducing them. So I think the conclusion was, yeah, a lot of the drivers and the teams were quite excited about something different. So hopefully maybe just one more lap behind the safety car. That's the number 16 car of Bal Sidhu, who's largely raced Ginettas in G40s. Bal started and then raced a Porsche last year in another championship in the UK. Bal partnered up with George Jackson, who we've seen a chunk of racing in TCR cars. George will maybe get the opportunity to drive that car in the second sprint race, or possibly might have to wait until tomorrow for the 100-minute race. But we've got the cars all fully formed in a queue behind the safety car. There is our pole sitting car. Must have been such a light touch between Porsche and McLaren, because there doesn't seem to be any damage on either of them at all. There were no little bits of carbon fibre flicked off either car that I could see at the time that they both got towards Redgate Corner. So for Darren Kell, he'll have been on the radio, he'll have checked and with the team, did you see anything come off the car? He'd have felt it and moved it around just to check that everything was good, and then once we get this race back underway, then we should hopefully see Darren Kell work his way back up through the order, sharing with his son, James Kell, who is largely going to be racing in GT World Challenge Europe in the endurance category this year, is James, and I think he's doing a little bit of GT Open as well. So lights are still on the safety car for the moment, which is just heading through the Fogarty S's and onto the Melbourne Loop on the Grand Prix configuration. We raced twice on the Donington Park Grand Prix circuit this year, so rounds 1 and 3 here this weekend. We're back in the 20th of September for rounds 15, 16, 17 and 18. Lights are off on the safety car, so we're going to be able to get things back underway. Remember, Simon Orange had built up a 7.5 second lead almost between himself and Greg Caton's Porsche in second place. Well, what can Simon Orange do now? A man who has previously claimed this championship and has been racing now this McLaren GT3 for a good few years. He's partnered up in tomorrow's race with Marcus Clutton, the pro driver. Marcus, as a pro, cannot get involved in the sprint races today, so Simon knows he's got all of the driving duties to deal with today and gets a good restart. Keep an eye on the KTM crossbow of Tom Walpole, the Group GTB leading car, under pressure from the Bill Cayley Porsche that sits behind. Down through the Craner curves they go, and with no cars in the gravel down there now. Great work by the marshals and the Snatch crew to get those cars out of the way as quickly as possible. We've got 8 minutes of racing still to go. Now, the fastest lap of the race has been done by Mark Smith in third place in the Parkk Motorsport number 10 McLaren, the American driver, posting a time of a 1 minute 27.579. 1 minute 27.579. About 8/10 shy of his qualification time. But for Mark, good seat time in advance of him racing again here next weekend. And you can see that he's not that far behind Greg Caton at the wheel of the distinctively liveried Parkk Motorsport car. It looks good on the television. It looks really good in the flesh as well, with the light bouncing off it and those day-glow pink flashes to it. Downhill and in towards the braking area for the Melbourne hairpin. Rear-engine, normally aspirated Porsche under pressure from turbocharged McLaren 720 in the hands of Mark Smith. Turn their way through Goddard's and onto another lap. This is going to be lap number 10 that they complete this time through. Peter Ersig's not that far away at the wheel of the Audi, and then we get Ian Campbell in the leading Lamborghini, who still continues to lead Group GTC at the moment. Graham Tilley in the second of the Lamborghinis, the red car with its day-glow flashes, second in the group. But Bal Sidhu doing a really good job in the Trade Nation back car to close in on his coattails as they start to plummet back downhill through the Craner curves once more. Donington Park circuit looks absolutely fantastic in the sunshine. Graham Tilley runs a little bit wide there though, through the old hairpin, has to get off the gas, and straight away Bal Sidhu is close enough to pounce, so Graham Tilley loses a place, drops from second in Group GTC to third in Group GTC. That'll now put him outside of the top 6 overall, down to 7th place. And for Graham Tilley, if he loses another place, that would be to Paul Bailey, who runs in Group GTO, so he could afford to let the next few cars go through, and it wouldn't actually drop him any further down through the group that he's in, so he wouldn't lose any further championship points if, for instance, the next 2 McLarens get through, because one's a Group GTO car of Paul Bailey, the next is a Group GT3 car of Andre Borodin, then you get the 2 Group GTB cars of Tom Walpole and Bill Cayley. As for Darren Kell, well, 3 more places gained on the previous lap for the number 88 McLaren. He's now up into 14th position, and I would imagine is poised to maybe grab another place before he completes this lap. So he's on a bit of a charge, is Darren Kell. 5 3/4 minutes to go. This is going to be 12 laps completed this time through. Over the start-finish sign they go. Tom Walpole in the KTM still leading Group GTB. Bill Cayley falling away a little bit more and into the clutches of the number 63 Lamborghini, which is Frank Morris. Frank is a Group GTC Lamborghini, trying to hunt down a Group GTB Porsche. And I've got to say, the Parkk Motorsport and GT Cup technical team doing a really good job of trying to balance the performance of all of the cars, so that regardless of what car you run, it fits into the group and can race pretty much wheel to wheel and door handle to door handle, subject to driver speed, with all the other cars in that group. Now this is Graham Tilley with Paul Bailey right behind him. Then you've got the blue and the yellow McLaren in the hands of Andre Borodin. Good to see Andre back in GT Cup for this weekend. I think he's coming out for another couple of rounds, largely focused on racing in other championships. He's also a very busy man, plays a lot of pole loaders, Andre Borodin. So through the Fogarty S's, bouncing over the curb goes Paul Bailey. Not really gaining anything on Graham Tilley, but not losing anything either. He's also able to maintain the gap between himself and the McLaren that sits behind of Andre Borodin. Simon Orange, in the meantime, since the restart of this race, hasn't really pulled away from Greg Caton. Simon Orange has picked up the fastest lap of the race, just done a 1 minute 27.169, but he's still only a second up the road from Greg Caton's Porsche, and you can see just how close the pair of them are as they head down in towards the old hairpin on lap number 13 this time through. Simon Orange pushing hard, the owner of Sale Sharks Rugby Club. So onto the brakes, turns his way in towards the right-hander. So McLaren, Porsche, then the McLaren of the American driver Mark Smith. Darren Kell still not able to get past Frank Morris at this stage at the wheel of his Group GTC Lamborghini. He's just able to stay ahead of the GT3 McLaren. And then just ahead of the Lamborghini, of course, is Bill Cayley's Porsche, the Uber GT Porsche that runs in Group GTB. So all of these cars in separate groups. Group GTB, Group GTC, Group GT3. That little trio just heading out of Coppice Corner and down the straight. In the meantime, is Graham Tilley going to lose a place to Paul Bailey, who's looking for the inside line as they head in towards the Fogarty S's? No, Paul realised that the gap was going to close, and with all of his experience, just backed off the throttle. And as a result of that, has lost a little bit of time to the car he was trying to hunt down. Just behind Paul Bailey, Andre Borodin is feeling the pinch as well. He's got the Group GTB leading KTM behind in the hands of Tom Walpole. So no matter where you look, there are fantastic little squabbles going on, whether it either be within the same group or, in the case of these that we're looking at now, inter-group squabbles. 2.5 minutes to go. The fastest lap has bounced around again. It's now gone the way of Mark Smith. 1 minute 26.898 for Mark Smith. And that could be important come the totting up at the end of the season. There is an extra point for the fastest lap in each group. Bit of a wiggle coming out of Redgate there for Darren Kell, who still cannot quite thread his way through and past Frank Morris. So despite his very best efforts, the McLaren is sort of bottled up behind. I think for Darren Kell, he's also thinking, okay, all right, I've already had one trip into the gravel trap. What he doesn't want to do is cause himself any further problems. So maybe discretion is the better part of valour on this occasion, unless the door is really open or he gets a really good run, and just sit behind. As frustrating as it might be, it still gets championship points on the board in the opening weekend. And for Darren, that could be important because he is in for the full season, whereas his son James, who he's sharing with, is only doing a part season. I think he's through this time, Darren Kell. Yep, so did the sensible thing, just waited until he got a good run, and that good run came out of Coppice Corner, picks off the Lamborghini, and now flashes his lights because he's trying to close in on Bill Cayley's Porsche. Bill, who's, I don't think, raced anything other than Porsches over the years, whether it be in the Boxster in Class 2 of the Porsche Club GB Championship, and then stepped up to Class 1. Now he should get picked off by the McLaren, you would have thought, on the way towards Redgate Corner this time. Darren Kelly's on the left-hand side of the circuit. That's the outside line for Redgate Corner, but is he going to brave it out on the brake to go around the outside? He does, absolutely. So no problems this time going around the outside at Redgate Corner. So another couple of places picked off. That will now get Darren Kell, remember that's the pole sitting number 88 McLaren, up into 11th position in this race. So we're into the final few seconds already of it. The 25 minutes has absolutely flown by. Simon Orange is leading by just 0.7 of a second, so it's not done and dusted yet as they head up towards Goddard's. Is he going to get over the start-finish line before the clock ticks to 0? It's going to be close. I think we could be on for an extra lap here potentially. Simon Orange can't afford to back off to let the clock tick to 0. He's going to have to nail the throttle, and as they come over the start-finish line, there's a second to go. That was why he couldn't back off, because he knew if he'd have backed off, he'd have lost the lead of the race. So one more lap to go. Has Greg Caton got the keys to the door to unlock it and take the lead of the race? Well, we'll find out as they charge down through the Craner curves. We've seen both of these drivers win races in the past in GT Cup, and Greg Caton has been giving it everything in the last lap because he has now set the fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 26.780. So we've seen Simon Orange, Mark Smith and Greg Caton, the top three, all at some point have the fastest lap of the race. But it's Simon Orange that leads from Greg Caton, and Mark Smith now is just an extra 1.5 seconds back in third place at the wheel of the Paddock Motorsport McLaren. out of Coppice Corner. There's traffic up the road to deal with, the first of which will be the car of Brent Millage, returning to the championship after a few years away, having previously raced the Ginetta in this championship. First cut his teeth in Caterham racing though, and was a former motorcycle racer, I think, Brent, some years ago. So picks off Brent Millage on the run down in towards the old hairpin, but there'll still be Ian Astley's SVG Motorsport BMW to deal with for Simon Orange, and he should pick that off on the straight up towards Goddard's. Greg Caton is a little bit too far back to do anything about it. He's going to try and see if he can get as close to Simon Orange as possible, but as long as Simon is clean out of Goddard's, he is on for the opening win in the 2025 GT Cup Championship. Simon Orange comes through to claim the win from Greg Caton in second place and Mark Smith in third. The top three cars separated by just 1.6 seconds in the end. Peter Ursig in the Audi, making his debut in the GT Cup Championship, comes through to finish in fourth position, the Kiwi. And then it should be Ian Campbell who will finish in fifth place and pick up the win in Group GTC. But there's still battles going on out there. This is Ray Harris coming under pressure from Patrick Collins, and as an off, and I'm afraid that is Darren Kell, who has put the McLaren into the wall coming out of the old, not out the old hairpin, out the Melbourne hairpin. And quite how that occurred, I don't know, but that's damage to the McLaren, I'm afraid. And it's Paul Bailey, I should say, that's gone off. Apologies to Darren Kell. Paul Bailey, that's... In fact, they've both gone off. Yeah, so the two carbon fibre McLarens, that's Paul Bailey on the inside there, Darren Kell on the outside. So did they come together? They were in 13th and 14th places at the moment, which does suggest they were maybe fighting for the same piece of tarmac, and both McLarens, which are identical, have gone off at the same point. So maybe we might be able to show a replay of that. Here comes Ray Harris sliding his way over the start-finish line. Patrick Collins on his return to the championship comes through. Doc Bush is not that far behind as well, and all of those were fighting for championship positions as well. That's 14th, 15th and 16th that they'll be classified in. And I think there's still a few more potentially to come over the start-finish line. Maybe the Aston Martin of Matt Eddles is the final car that will take the checkered flag, because other than that I think everybody else is through. Yeah, Matt Eddles I think was lapped by Simon Orange on the final lap, but that was the cooling down lap, so he's quite right to be able to just take the checkered flag as the last car. I think the two cars behind, Ian Astley and Brent Millage, probably took it twice. Let's just have a quick look back. I think we could probably see what happened. So there up the inside goes Paul Bailey, and as they come out of the corner, Darren Kell gets a run on him. And then as they start to accelerate their way up the hill, there's a touch between the pair of them. That pitches off Darren Kell into the barriers on the left-hand side of the circuit. Paul Bailey goes off onto the right-hand side of the circuit and also makes contact with the barriers. And I'm afraid that that is the two carbon McLarens out of the way. Paul Bailey limps his way over the start-finish line with, I'm assuming, a flat tyre rather than anything else, because Paul, if that were an engine, would probably be shutting it off. So yeah, I think that's probably tyre damage, but at least that does mean that Paul Bailey takes the checkered flag, which means that he should pick up some championship points for that one. So that was an interesting final lap to the race, but let's just confirm the results for you then for our opening race of the season. Simon Orange claims the win by just 0.4 of a second in the end from Greg Caton in second place, and Mark Smith wraps up the podium. It was Peter Ursig in third place, and Group GTC was won by Ian Campbell, who was next up in fifth position. Bal Sidhu was sixth, ahead of Graham Tilley in seventh place. Andre Borodin with eighth, and Group GTB went the way of Tom Walpole, who was there in ninth place. Frank Morris completed the top 10. Then as we head outside of the top 10 to 11th place, it was Bill Cayley in 11th place. Archie Clark claimed the win in Group GTH, finishing in 12th place overall, with Mark Ellman in 9th, ahead of Ray Griffiths in 10th and Patrick Collins, Mark Ellman in 13th, Ray Griffiths 14th and Patrick Collins 15th. Doc Bush was there in 16th place, Matt Eddles was there in 17th place, and Paul Bailey limped the McLaren over the start-finish line with its damage to finish in 18th place. Darren Kell didn't see the checkered flag, 19th, and Ian Astley in the BMW shown as 20th. Both of those final two cars a lap adrift. Brent Millage was also a lap adrift in 21st place, and then two cars that we lost very early on into the gravel trap down at the old hairpin. Rupert Williams was one of them, and Mac Priestwood was the other that sadly didn't see the checkered flag. So that is our first sprint race of the season done in GT Cup. The cars making their way back into the pit lane area. The teams will have to re-prep all of those cars and get them back out for a further sprint race that will be taking on later on today. That's scheduled to be around about 5 o'clock this evening. So hopefully you'll be able to join us for that one. So from everybody here at Donington Park, Onside Productions, GT Cup and Butte Motorsport, thanks for joining us for the opening race of the season. We should be back with you around about 5 o'clock this evening. So until then, we'll say goodbye.